Check 1 2, check 1 2. Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network. Today is June 11th, 2020, in our big, beautiful, crazy world that we are living in right now. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Give me some thumbs up. Let me know that everything's coming through all right. I've got about 20 different tabs open right now to try to bring to you an important topic. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to what's been going on in Seattle, but it's been an interesting development. We're going to get into that today. We're going to talk about whether or not what's happening in Seattle is something like, anarchism, something that maybe we want to support, or maybe it's something we should be worried about. We're going to get into all that and break that down. And I really hope, before I go any further, that my audience, those of you who are listening, I hope that those of you, I don't know, I'm just going to try to get into this video. I have so many complaints about some of my audience lately. But if you have a philosophical mind and you can think deeper than just turning everything into a conspiracy theory, today I'm speaking to you. And I hope some of you are still out there. I feel like I've lost some of my philosophically minded audience over the last couple months because of my work investigating Epstein and the Finders and 5G and other things. But I'm hoping that my thoughtful, intelligent audience is still out there somewhere, so that we can have a healthy discussion about philosophy, about what's going on, and yes, dissecting potential conspiracies that could be taking place right now. But we're going to get into all that right now in just a moment. Let's go ahead and dive into it right now. Of course, just remind you guys, the website is theconsciousresistance.com, theconsciousresistance.com. Sign up for our email newsletter. Follow us on all of the alternative social media platforms, Float, Minds, BitChute. Sign up for my text list, guys. If you're on this text list, you would have just got a text message 2 minutes ago saying, hey, I'm going live. Here's the video. Here's the link. And you wouldn't have to rely on Facebook, YouTube, etc. to tell you about it. So theconsciousresistance.com. So have you guys heard of what is being called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or the CHAZ? This Capitol Hill, of course, is a neighborhood in the Seattle area. And in the last couple of days, it's become the site of activism, of community. It's also become the site of potential violence. It's become I guess, a touchstone for conspiracy theorists on the right, who are just saying that everything that's going on over there is just Antifa taking over, and they're taking over the neighborhoods, whatever. I mean, depending on whether you're watching InfoWars or right-wing media or left-wing media, you're going to get a totally different perspective of what's going on here. So we're going to try to dig through all that. We're going to see what's actually happening. We're going to look at the good, the bad, the ugly, and we're going to talk about why this strategy is a good thing, whether you support the people's philosophy who are involved with it or not. So let's do a little bit of background. A couple of nights ago, there was a standoff at the East Precinct Seattle Police Department in the Capitol Hill neighborhood area. And basically, the police chief decided they were going to back off and they were going to leave, that they abandoned the police department because of fears or concerns of just escalating violence and creating problems. If you're not familiar, Seattle is a pretty heavy hotbed for left-wing activism, particularly, yes, some people who call themselves Antifa, people who use the black bloc strategy, and left-wing anarchists and syndicalists and communists, not exclusively. I definitely know some people who are not of that variety that live in the Seattle area, but it's known for that. Particularly the Northwest in general is known for that. So when they abandoned the precinct, the protesters stepped in and they claimed the area surrounding the police department, and now they've taken, I think, 6 streets or so. Let me see if I can just show you guys a little clip. This is coming from Twitter. We're going to look at several different Twitter accounts. And so, like I said, the mayor and the police chief made the decision to back off so that there was not any further violence between protesters and the people involved. And so now, you can see with this grainy video, some of the protesters and organizers have set up barricades and have blocked off parts of the community. The streets are open. You see there's cars blocking there. There's signs when you walk in that says, "Welcome to Free Seattle," or "Welcome to the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone." And it's pretty interesting. It reminds me of the Occupy times. And I know some of you didn't agree with or participate in Occupy either. But it reminds me of that in the sense that people are roaming the streets. People are out. And again, here's activists building their own barricades. And so they're calling it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. As you can see here, hopefully the video looks not so grainy. They're taking fences and those look like dumpsters, and they're just lining up to create barricades. And Yeah, and trying to claim some area, some parts of the town. Now, of course, there are some businesses within this area that is being called the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. And there's the police department, you can see. And yeah, for those who are not into this, and I'm definitely not into promoting violence, but there's tagging saying kill the police. Like I said, this is mainly left-wing extremists, but it's not exclusively that. There are also people, there's a lot of white folks I noticed there from the pictures. There's lots of people of color. And yeah, and there's music and there's people bringing out food. What I'm reading right now here is from the Capitol Hill Seattle blog that has been following that story. And then we can look over here at the canary.co. And this is from a couple of days ago. Seattle sleepless as authorities mobilize after locals declare free zone. So again, this is just kind of going over the same thing. They've set up the same area. 11th and Pine is, I think, the main corner. And right here it says, it's claimed that the far-right Proud Boys were seen in the area, but armed members of the John Brown Gun Club apparently turned up to see them off. So for those who don't know, the John Brown Gun Club is a left-wing gun club. You know, many on the right are typically the ones calling for gun rights and Second Amendment and militias and that sort of thing. Some of you might not be aware that left-wing activists also do support guns. Not most of the Democrats and those kinds of left-wing, but the further left you get, the left realizes that guns are valuable and that they can be used to defend people and to protect them. So the John Brown Gun Club is one left-wing outlet. You also have like the, some of the Black Panthers chapters, like in Dallas out here in Texas, they carry guns. So it's not always exclusively right-wing people. And that's why I try to push back whenever you hear people saying, oh, it's just those crazy racist right-wingers. Some left-wing people also use guns. And so apparently they've been patrolling that area and in a sense becoming like their own private police force, I guess you could argue. Let's go to another outlet here. This is from Como News. This is a local news station. I believe it's ABC in Seattle. Property of the people. Protesters set up camp outside Seattle Police Department East Precinct. And it's kind of going over some of the same things that we've been covering here. I'll show you another quick video just to get you a little bit of visuals. But as you can see, lots of people, some of them are wearing face masks. Some of them are wearing face covers, which some of you like to call everybody who has a mask on Antifa. I want to pay attention to this guy right here. We're going to get more into him in a moment. His name is Raz Simone. He is a rapper, and he has, according to some people, become a de facto leader of this movement. Or according to the right-wing media, he's now the warlord who's taken over Seattle. I mean, it's 6 blocks. It's not the entire city by any means, but that's how it's being displayed on the right-wing media. But I will show you some very troubling things about this guy, Raz Simone, in just a moment, using violence. And apparently it's him and some of his supporters who are black men who have come in and, you know, are leading the Black Lives Matter movement and are, according to some reports, using violence. And there is a video of him punching somebody, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But he's talking to the media and saying it's just, you know, people power and this sort of thing. But if you look around, I mean, yes, there are spray painting, there's tagging, there's, you know, but there's people out there bringing food. This is why I was saying it reminds me of Occupy. There's an old white lady right there. It reminds me of Occupy, that people bring out supplies to try to help this last. Their goal is to hold this area as long as possible. And you see that defunding Seattle Police Department. This is now a community center. This is the police department. You know, we'll see what happens. And I will get into some of the theories in just a moment, because I'm sure some of you guys are saying, Derrick, but why would they let them take it? You know, there's some larger plan. This is, you know, to bring in the United Nations and the New World Order. Like, I don't know, guys. It's literally 6 blocks. But the right-wing media, let's say InfoWars and, of course, Donald Trump, play it up like it's the end of the world, like they've taken over Seattle and they're just, you know, robbing people blind everywhere. There are some shady things. We're getting to that, but I want to do this introduction so you guys can kind of see what this is about. So now that you guys hopefully are caught up, let's take a look now at the, I'm going to X out of some of these links. Maybe my computer will go faster. The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone already has a Wikipedia page. You know, people hurry up real quick to get these things up. And so the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, CHAZ, or the Zone, also known as Free Capitol Hill, is a self-declared autonomous zone, intentional community, and commune covering approximately 6 blocks in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle. The zone was established on June 8th after the East Precinct building was abandoned by the Seattle Police Department. Local governance in the zone is apparently decentralized, with the goal of creating a zone that is beyond policing. What exactly that means, we'll get into. There are many posted demands, and we're going to get into those demands, including rent control, degentrification, police abolition or defunding, funding community health, and dropping charges against protesters. Reactions to the zone have varied through the political spectrum. Donald Trump called to take back the zone, while Mayor Jenny Durkan called to de-escalate the situation. So this is still a, still a developing situation. And again, though, Capitol Hill is a district in downtown Seattle, which is already known for LGBT and counterculture communities. So it's not really that surprising to see this happen in this area, because this is, if you live in a city, everybody's got that one neighborhood or that one part of town where the tattoo shops and where the counterculture, hangs out and spends time. Maybe some of you normies or squares don't go there, but Houston has it, and it's called Montrose. Everybody has that area. So it's not like they went to the white suburban area and they took over that area. This is an area where it's probably already filled with activists and like-minded people, and so they're kind of into it. This was also the center for the mass protests during the 1999 Seattle World Trade Organization protests, which some people call the Battle of Seattle. You guys may remember this huge protest. And this was also the site of Occupy Seattle. So again, it has a history of protests in this area. So it's not like unheard of, I'd say, for this to happen here. And then it goes into some of the background. So centered around the East Precinct building, it stretches northeast Denny Way, east to 13th Avenue, south to East Pike, and west to Broadway. The entirety of Cal Anderson Park also falls inside the zone. The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or the CHAZ, has no centralized system of governance, or at least that's what they're working towards. Occupants have stated their intentions of creating a neighborhood beyond policing and a society where police are no longer necessary, and I definitely agree with that. Members of the self-described anti-fascist, anti-racist, pro-worker, Puget Sound John Brown Club were seen openly carrying rifles in the zone. Reporters from a local Seattle-based Fox affiliate were removed from the zone by occupants. So they don't want Fox there. So I'm guessing if they don't like, how you report, they're going to drive you out of there. So we'll check it out. June 10th article from City Journal says hip-hop artist Raz Simone is a co-leader and enforcer, while former mayoral candidate Nikita Oliver formulates the commune's political aims. However, according to Simone, the zone has no central leadership. But again, this is the rapper Raz Simone that I showed you guys just a moment ago, who is apparently kind of stepping in and I guess taking an enforcer role to some degree. And on June 9th, a blog post posted on Medium, which we're going to go over in just a few minutes, posted the list of demands from this group. And you can see here, this is a street map of the area where they've actually claimed. So we're going to go ahead now and start getting into a little bit of the philosophy. I think I've laid the ground probably adequately now for you guys to understand what's happening here. You can see the map. You can see the area. Let me just check how everybody's doing over here. Let me just see what your comments are like. I'd feel safer with him than cops. Yeah, some would say that too. Well, we're going to talk about it at that in just a second. The Chai Coms are taking over. Yeah, that's InfoWars for you. All right, so let's go back. Let's look now. I wonder how many of you have heard of temporary autonomous zones, because that's essentially what we're seeing. The Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone is a form of a temporary autonomous zone, or a TAZ. Now, a TAZ was first described by anarchist writer and poet Hakeem Bey, otherwise known as Peter Wilson, when he published in 1991 and then again in 2011. His book is composed of 3 sections: Chaos, the Broad Streets of Ontological Anarchism, Communiques of the Association for Ontological Anarchy, and The Temporary Autonomous Zone. The book describes the socio-political tactic of creating temporary spaces that elude formal structures of control. So you guys know that I've been working on building an intentional community, trying to find some land that is, of course, occupied by a state. Let's say I did it in the United States. Well, the United States government still technically believes they own the land. So we're trying to create a safe space there, something that could eventually hopefully be permanent. But a temporary autonomous zone is something that is more like what we're seeing here with the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. It can be a space that is set up, and maybe it's only meant to last a short period of time for a particular purpose, like sending a message to the cops, or maybe even just a moral victory, like we claimed the police station, we've got this area under control, it's now in the hands of the people, that sort of thing. Or it can be, for different purposes. So the essay uses various examples from history and philosophy, all of which suggest that the best way to create a non-hierarchical system of social relationships is to concentrate on the present and on releasing one's own mind from controlling mechanisms that have been imposed on them. In the formation of a temporary autonomous zone, the book argues that information becomes a key tool that sneaks into the cracks of formal procedures. A new territory of the moment is created that is on boundary line of established regions. Any attempt at permanence that goes beyond that moment deteriorates to a structured system that inevitably stifles individual creativity. So they're basically saying the more structured and permanent you get, the less freedom there will be for the individual. And so he calls for it to be temporary. But later on, he said, quote, "We have to consider the fact that not all existing autonomous zones are temporary. Some are more or less permanent." So this book is essentially the way that this idea was first put out there. And this is, of course, in the early 90s and the 2000s. So it's really a recent concept, but that is what we're witnessing in practice. So if you've never heard of that, this is not an unheard of idea. This is what many anarchists have talked about doing. I used to have a friend who I actually interviewed on the Conscious Resistance channel. If you guys search Michael Fielding, you'll go back and see, this is a friend of mine who, I don't know whatever happened to Michael. Michael, if you're out there, I hope you're safe and doing well. But he believed in temporary autonomous zones, going into the forest and trying to reclaim land. And he would create shelters and live in the woods and basically come out into society as often as he needed. Sometimes he was living in tents. Sometimes he was living in shelters that he built in the woods of the Houston area and other places like that, or in the Austin area. And so I've seen people do this tactic. It's not unheard of for those of you who are just not philosophically inclined or haven't studied anarchism. Now let's do a CIA Google search here. Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Now we're going to start looking at the different ways that this is being promoted. Again, the right wing is promoting it as it's the end of the world, and you know the fascists have taken over Seattle, and we're going to get to Donald Trump's tweet in just a second. And then, of course, the left wing kind of seems to be downplaying, whether it's actually good or bad. They're downplaying some of the more nefarious elements. So the New York Times says, inside Seattle's autonomous zone, Governor Inslee baffles literally everyone. He is being widely mocked for saying he wasn't aware that there was a Capitol Hill autonomous zone in Seattle, even though he's the governor of the state. Fox News says Seattle autonomous zone leader denies acting like a warlord. We're going to get into that. Seattle mayor tells Trump, go back to your bunker. Trump threatens to intervene in Seattle. And here we go. Seattle police want to return to vacated precinct and what protesters call an autonomous zone. So that was just 3 hours ago. They're saying the Seattle police want to return. Now they could come back and it could get violent between the protesters and the cops, but that probably would just infuriate people more. And I think that's what the cops are trying to do, is to avoid not only giving them a moral victory by look, hey, the police attacked us again. All that's going to do is get more support, right? And of course, some of you crazy right-wingers are calling for, gas those terrorists. Look at the Daily Mail. Trump says domestic terrorists have taken over Seattle and demands that the Chaz be retaken. So let's look at this from the president of the USA. Domestic terrorists have taken over Seattle, run by radical left Democrats, of course. Law and order. I mean, this is his statement. 59,000 retweets, 217,000 likes. This is crazy. And then, of course, other people chiming in. They are terrorists, destroying property, monuments, and creating chaos. This is unacceptable in the United States of America. They must pay for what they are doing. This is the really scary shit, dude, that people are so bought into the left-right paradigm that they really, they'll support violence against other people, Look at this. Somebody made a meme of Donald Trump, the law and order president, like with him with a bunch of cops behind him. That maybe to some of you, that's like, oh, that's a good shot of America. Trump with a bunch of militarized cops. To me, that does not look good. It's not a good sign. Either way, that's what's going on. That's Trump saying. Now let's look at some more right wing again. Here's what Red State. Do yourself a favor and never visit them unless you want to just read right wing propaganda. Seattle's autonomous zone gets a warlord, and he's doing what the cops should have done. And so they go in here talking, and again, we're going to get into some of these things because there are things I do not support. Let me go ahead and just show this to you right now. This is a couple days ago, or actually it was posted yesterday, but I think it's from 2 days ago. So there's somebody here spray painting a building. I don't have the audio on, guys, but you don't really need to hear it. It's just, you can see it. So right there, that's Raz Simone, this black fellow to the right. And then there's people live streaming. There's somebody live streaming who's on, I guess, in support of him. And they're telling this gentleman here, stop spray painting. You can't spray paint this wall, and he's just like, hey, I got it. Everything's cool. Don't worry about it. Everything's cool. And then they keep getting closer. They keep getting closer. And look, here he goes. He moves in. He literally grabs the guy and tries to stop him and say, look, dude, stop. And see, you notice how the live streamer who is supportive of Raz Simone, she turns away. She doesn't want people to see what's happening on camera. But they start pushing this guy out. They start getting in the way. And apparently Raz Simone does have some supporters out there who are helping him, I guess, enforce whatever it is they want enforced. And so if you're doing something that the crowd doesn't like, then they'll use violence against you. Now, some people would say, see, this is what you anarchists are going to get. You take away the cops and then there's a mob ready to take over and blah, blah, blah. And that is true to some extent. There's always going to be people trying to take over. Look, here you go. Things get a little heated. Again, I'm not playing the audio because it's just people shouting. You get the picture. So the camera's being knocked around. Eventually this guy runs away, but basically he gets punched in the face. His glasses get broke. Here's another view of the same thing. Let me see. This is them talking to the guy, driving him out of there. So this is why they're calling Raz Simone a warlord, because he seems to be guarding or protecting the area. And then here's Raz Simone saying, this actually went beautifully, and we all hugged it out and spoke with his dad. His dad now wants me to mentor him. It was great black dialogue and men apologizing to each other, abandoning pride. We all hugged each other and cried it out. It was beautiful. And if you go to the Twitter, he's getting trolled. I mean, people are like, yeah, it looks like you guys hugged it out after you acted violence towards him or whatever. But of course, the right wing is going to try to spin it and make it look as bad or dumb as they can, because these are people who are still trapped in the left-right paradigm. And so everything's got to be, staged in that, oh, this is just the leftists. Okay, well, it's so weird to me, because people who generally support guns and people, all these people who are talking about, for example, the "Don't Tread on Me" folks and all that kind of stuff, they only support the idea of militias and standing up to the government in 1776 and all this kind of stuff when it's people on the right. But when you have people who are maybe left-wing activists with a different philosophy, and again, I don't agree with their philosophy. We're about to show you the demands, but they're creating a temporary autonomous zone. They're doing more than any of you "Don't Tread on Me" flag militia people have ever done. I mean, I remember the Bundys, they took that one building, and I'm sure there are people who are talking shit to the Bundys when they took that building a couple of years back, who are supportive of the left right here taking the cops, and vice versa. It's because some of you guys are just hypocritical and you don't have principles. I can say that on principle, I support efforts to defund the police, to take over police buildings, and to make them really reflective of the people's values. And at the same time say, I don't support some of the claims that are being made. I don't support calls to violence, and I don't support some of the demands they're making. So this is coming from Reddit, so take it for whatever it's worth. So right here, somebody says, who is Raz Simone and who is he and his crew accountable to? Anyone? Are they the de facto authority now? If so, doesn't that basically make them warlords? Now, this could just be some troll right-winger trying to put that point in there, but let's just see where the conversation goes. Somebody says, Raz's crew is self-appointed, heavily armed, and has indicated their intention to police the area, and has engaged in the use of force. I am unaware of any rival street force or of their stature expressing the desire to hold authority. The power vacuum has apparently been filled. I'm guessing he made himself in control since he has the guns. And there's some more comments. Raz is becoming the very thing people didn't want to begin with. This is the second time I've seen Raz assault somebody on video during the protest, the first being Omari while he was live streaming, and I'll show you guys that. The video is terrifying. We are the police here now. Yeah, and they do say that. They say we are the police here now, but I don't think that has to be a scary thing, because if we build free communities and if we live a world without government, without cops, there's still going to be some sort of self-defense, community defense, and it should be coming from the people. The whole idea of elected representatives or cops is that they're supposed to be people from your neighborhood, from your community, who actually understand your values and support you and will, listen to you. Now, obviously that doesn't always work out. So, I mean, I don't think it's that scary to say we're the police now, because yeah, if you kick the cops out, well, then it's up to you to make sure that people aren't getting raped or stolen from or whatever. The people have to become that force. There's Raz Simone right there. So here we go. Man was tagging over someone else's art. Raz and group approached and separate him from the crowd, chasing him for 2 blocks. He begins to film with his phone. They take it from him. He tries to get it back, and they attack him, kicking him in the head and breaking his glasses. I don't know if that part is true. Obviously, I didn't see anybody get kicked in the head, but he definitely complained about his glasses. At one point, Raz threatens to shoot the man. They then begin to gaslight him that it was all his fault. Audio's only for the most of the end because woman in Raz's crew filming puts the phone in her pocket while the stream continues. Like I showed you guys, she didn't want you guys to be able to see what happened. It's like they're trying to cover up if things look bad. Sounds like government or cops. Now, again, here's some more right-wing news. This is from the Post-Millennial. Breaking Antifa mob planning to take over more Seattle neighborhoods. And this picture right here is not even from the same site. You know, they're just mixing images together, and they do their best to scare right-wingers. This is meant, honestly, I think most right-wingers, their audience are older people. Obviously not to say that only old people are conservatives, but I feel like their job, like Fox News, is to scare the people who are watching it. Oh, Seattle's on fire. And this person has maybe never been to Seattle, knows nothing about Seattle, but if Fox News or the Post-Millennial or Red State tells them Seattle's burning and radical leftist Democrats have taken over, they're going to believe it. And then they're going to support Trump's call for militarization. They're going to support sending out the military, sending out the National Guard. And maybe some of you say, yes, that's the whole point of it. The cops are letting them take over, so then they later have an excuse to become more militarized. I don't know. We can't prove that at the moment, but I think we need to be skeptical. So finally, now we're getting here to the demands. I hope that you guys are enjoying this. If you're new here, my name is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. Please do give us a thumbs up. Share this out, guys. Again, I'm trying to reach my audience who understands philosophy, who understands that I am an anarchist. I do work towards a world without cops and without government. But I'm not a radical left-wing anarchist, but I'm also not a right-wing conservative, whatever. I try to balance things out and see all these different viewpoints. And I understand that some of my fellow anarchists on the right do not agree with this. And I understand that some on the left are totally in support of this, and maybe they want even more violence. But the point is that we have to be able to see that there is something positive coming of this. This is the people, which we are all a part of, taking over a police station and trying to reclaim a part of their community and build something better. Now, that doesn't mean, again, that we have to agree with their tactics or with their words. So here we go. Here are the demands. The demands of the collective Black voices at Free Capitol Hill to the government of Seattle, Washington. So given the historical moment, we'll begin with our demands pertaining to the justice system. So here we go. The Seattle police department, and attached court system are beyond reform. So they're demanding the abolition of the police department and the court system. We demand that the Seattle Council and mayor defund and abolish the Seattle Police Department and attached criminal justice apparatus. This means 100% of funding, including existing pensions for police, at an equal level of priority. We also demand that the city disallow the operations of ICE in the city of Seattle. In the transitionary period between now and the dismantlement of the police department, we demand that the use of force be banned entirely. No guns, batons, riot shields, chemical weapons, especially against those exercising their First Amendment rights as Americans to protest. Now, isn't that interesting, right? Because then Raz and his crew come in there. Somebody could argue that somebody spray painting a building is exercising their First Amendment, right, freedom of speech, but then they stop them from exercising that. Number 3, we demand an end to the school-to-prison pipeline and the abolition of youth jails. Get kids out of prison, get cops out of school. We also demand that the new youth prison being built in Seattle currently be repurposed. And that sounds good. I mean, why the hell should the cops be in schools? You guys understand that this is all part of that school-to-prison pipeline where kids are getting arrested at school for things that they might have got a suspension for or detention for. And then for some children, they end up cycling into that prison system. They go from school into prison, straight out of there because of their arrests at young age. Number 4, we demand that not the city government nor the state government, but the federal government launch a full-scale investigation into past and current cases of police brutality in Seattle and Washington, as well as the reopening of all closed cases reported to the Office of Police Accountability. In particular, we demand that cases particular Seattle and Washington be reopened where no justice was served. And they list a few people who I believe have been killed by the cops that they want reinvestigated. We demand reparations for victims of police brutality and a form to be determined. So that would mean if you've been a victim of police violence, that the cops pay you back. Now, of course, the cops don't have any money, so it's all going to come from the taxpayer, which of course would be my problem with this and is my problem with reparations in general. Number 6, we demand that the city of Seattle make the names of the officers involved in police brutality a matter of public record. Anonymity should not even be a privilege in public service. Number 7, which has been highlighted by lots of people, we demand a retrial of all people of color currently serving a prison sentence for violent crime by a jury of their peers. I mean, and I get what they're going for there, but come on. I mean, basically you're saying every person of color, black, brown, yellow, whatever. And of course, they exclude white people. I don't even like that term because I don't know what a white person is. But that they all be retried. So where's that going to come from? More tax dollars from the people by a jury of their peers. And I'm guessing they mean like if it's a black guy being retried for a crime that he was involved in. And these are violent crimes. They don't even say nonviolent crimes. So somebody who's been in jail for a violent crime, give him a new trial and give him a trial with a jury of his peers, which I would assume they mean people of the same race, the same color. That's a little ridiculous to me. We demand decriminalization of the acts of protest and amnesty for protesters in general, but specifically those involved in what they're calling the George Floyd Rebellion against the terrorist cell that previously occupied this area, known as the Seattle Police Department. This includes the immediate release of all protesters currently being held after the arrests made at 11th and Pine on Sunday and Saturday night. So they're calling for people to be released. We demand that the city of Seattle and state government release any prisoner currently serving time for marijuana-related offenses. And that's, of course, let all the people out for weed. That's bullshit. We demand the city of Seattle and state government release any prisoner currently serving time for resisting arrest if there are no other related charges. And again, how can you be charged with resisting arrest whenever there are no other charges? That's garbage. I agree with that. We demand prisoners currently serving time to be given full and unrestricted right to vote, and for Washington state to pass legislation specifically breaking from federal law that prevents felons from being able to vote. That's interesting. I don't know how exactly I feel about that. I've heard a lot of people talk about that, giving prisoners the rights to vote. I don't know. Voting isn't going to fix things anyways. We demand an end to prosecutorial immunity for police officers. Getting rid of immunity for cops is a good idea. We demand the abolition of imprisonment, but especially the abolition of both youth prisons and private-owned for-profit prisons. I think there's an argument to be made for that. We demand, in replacement of the current criminal justice system, the creation of restorative, transformative accountability programs. We demand autonomy to be given to the people to create localized anti-crime systems. We demand that Seattle Police Department empty its lost and found and return property owned by denizens of the city. We demand justice for those who've been sexually harassed or abused by the Seattle Police Department or prison guards. We demand between now and the abolition of this department that each and every officer turn on their body cameras and that the body camera video of all Seattle police should be a matter of easily accessible public record. And they also demand that funding, which was previously used for Seattle police, to go to socialized health and medicine for the city of Seattle, free public housing, because they say housing is a right, public education, and naturalization services for immigrants. So obviously this is clearly like a left-wing thing, but as you guys saw, there's things in there that I agree with and that I think are worth considering, and maybe others that are worth debating. Ultimately, though, of course, this is all coming from taxpayer dollars because the cops have no money. So any money that the cops have is coming from the taxpayers who were robbed and forced to pay for the services, whether they like them or not. That's the problem with this whole socialized thing in general, because see, they want to take the money that was going to the cops, and instead of saying, hey, let's figure out how much money each of the taxpayers paid and let's give it back to the people. Let's all send them a check. Even if the check was just $5 that each of us individually paid overall. I mean, and it probably would be a lot more than that, guys, because here in Houston, they're considering giving the police $900 million, almost $1 billion. And in New York, the cops get $6 billion. So there's a lot of money that's coming from taxpayers. I would rather give it back to the taxpayers than to say, okay, well, now we're going to use it to some other new form of socialized forced system with healthcare or whatever. Maybe some of you guys think it's worth, but what I'm saying is if you give the people back their own money, then the people can decide what they want to do with it. And that's what I always believe in is best. So then we move on here. This is the Industrial Workers of the World, which is definitely a left-wing union. They basically are saying that they endorse and support the Seattle Chaz, the autonomous zone, and they're kind of just doing their own description here. So now let's go into Twitter and find some of these tweets that I was talking about that are showing some of the more dangerous things. So here we got the whole Seattle has a warlord, according to some people on Reddit and Twitter. And then we got, here's Raz Simone's own account, his own Twitter, where he says, this actually went beautifully. And we all hugged it out and spoke with his dad. His dad now wants me to mentor him. And of course, he's getting trolled a lot on Twitter, which is kind of funny. And then let me show you one more, guys. Let me see if I got it right here. This is Omari. This is a guy who is live streaming. And he's actually streaming right now. You can see he's out there in Seattle. This is 2 hours ago. Small crowd gathers outside East Precinct. Chief is inside inspecting the building with local media. So they're starting to show up now. And I think at some point we're going to see them try to take it back. So there are some developments, but let's go over here to this one. This is Raz Simone on a live stream that apparently they tried to delete, and they're telling this guy to stop filming or to leave or whatever. He's talking shit to him, and just watch how Raz, who was on the news saying he's, an unofficial leader or spokesperson for this movement, watch how he handles this. Again, you don't really need to hear the sound. He's just talking shit. But here you go. Watch this. And here it comes. Boom. Hit to the face right there. Knocks him down. Obviously, lots of scuffling. That's how he apparently handles people who do not listen to him. And you can see he's got some people behind him that maybe are protecting him or just there, I guess, as intimidation force. And that's not cool. And as somebody commented here, it's hard to argue with the guy holding a gun. So, I mean, is this the new warlord? Is there any accuracy to that claims? Here's the same incident again with the spray painting. So, I mean, of course, the right wing is taking these, and like I said, they're spinning it. I think InfoWars is saying Antifa terrorists have taken over Seattle, when it's clearly not just people who would identify as Antifa. There's black people, there's white people, there's just activists, there's people dropping off tampons and food. And I'm sure some of you guys, if you've been paying attention, you saw a thing where there was a statement circulating saying that they invited homeless people in there and the homeless people stole all the food. I don't know if that's true, but all I know is that the right wing is using that to look, it took 2 days for communism to eat itself. And that might be true. This could end up in a horrible failed experiment. But look, 19 hours ago, representatives of the Native American community are addressing the crowd about environmental justice. I mean, look, there's all types of people here gathering, coming together. And I mean, and see right there, they even made a sign, welcome to the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. They made that pretty quick. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty interesting experience just to witness. This is somewhat of a historical thing, whether you appreciate or like it or not. It is. And let me go follow him real quick. I'm going to keep up with that. Now, here's another thing. Here's from Como News, local news again. That does a little bit of fact check. What's true and false about the protester-occupied autonomous zone known as Chaz? Some tall tales are coming out of the autonomous zone, Capitol Hill, that protesters now seem to control. The trouble is that there's just enough truth in these stories to be told to cast about what's a lie. So here we go. After Seattle police boarded up and abandoned the East Precinct, a story started to spread that protesters with guns had broken in and were occupying the building. That appears to be false. However, armed citizens are patrolling the streets around the police station, and that's a good thing, I would say. Washington is an open carry state, but police said there are limits. Police Assistant Chief Deanna Nolette said there is no legal right for those arms to be used to intimidate community members, and I agree with that. And the assistant chief says, we've actually heard anecdotally that reports of citizens and businesses are being asked to pay a fee to operate within this area. This is the crime of extortion. I saw a post going around. I'm not able to verify it because it was just a screenshot, but it was allegedly from a local business owner who said that they had been approached by members of Raz Simone's crew or just somebody from the Chaz that was going around saying, hey, local businesses have to pay a fee if they're going to operate within our autonomous zone. So now they're becoming the tax collectors, which I don't support at all. And it's extortion. And so they basically said, hey, we'll take cash or we'll take Bitcoin. And the business owner, if it was true, said, I told them I'd take Bitcoin. I'd do it in Bitcoin just so I could have another day to figure out what to do. And they basically said, I guess I'll pay so I don't have any trouble, but I don't like it. And if that's going on, that's not cool. For any police facilities that have been overtaken, it says, Como News photographer did find barricades and other measures going up at the South Police Precinct, possibly as a preemptive measure. Another misconception is that the protesters speak with one voice. This collective believes in a diversity of tactics. And if you understand left-wing politics, diversity of tactics means what it says. They believe in a diverse set of tactics. So that means some people are going to take peaceful protests. Some people might believe in violence. Some people believe in putting up posters. Some people believe in talking. Some people believe in carrying guns. It's a diversity of tactics. You let all different people with their different beliefs collaborate. She says, Dae Shik Kim Hawkins Jr., one of the organizers, says, I think a lot of different coalitions and efforts are trying to achieve a very similar goal. Police said they are reaching out to these leaders so they can move back into the East Precinct without inciting more civil unrest. So it says the officers near the occupied area are still responding to emergency calls because some people were worried that the 911 call center was within this police station and that, that people could be getting harmed or killed, because there's no 911 calls. But apparently that is not actually true. They're still able to respond to the calls. And here's Raz Simone's Instagram account. One day ago, he posted, "We took over the Seattle Police Precinct with peace. Now we need your help. Come join us at 12th and Pine with tents and sleeping bags, or just yourself for however long it takes." And as you can see, because of the right wing, he's getting trolled. "You ain't shit but a punk bitch. Say it to your face. Whoop that ass in a minute. Go home. You're corny and fake as fuck. No one's scared of your bitch ass. You asshole terrorist. Go die in hell soon." I mean, it's just, this is what, he's getting clowned all over Instagram, like it or not. And here's another post he made showing him speaking. It says, "It was beautiful seeing," this is 5 days ago, "seeing so many leaders, organizations, youth, and elders all come out, listen to each other and support. We marched one group of a few thousand from Cal Anderson Park. And here they are outside of a Starbucks giving speeches," which is kind of very Seattle, speaking and rallying outside of a Starbucks. And then I think I got one more, and then we're going to wrap this up. It says, "At the Seattle Police Presser today, in response to the anarchist Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, they said they are aware of businesses possibly being extorted and have received threats that the abandoned East Precinct will be burned down." Of course, it's not being burned down at the moment. And like I showed you guys just a moment ago on this one here, apparently the cops are there right now inspecting it. And looks like Omari posted 1 hour ago an exclusive live interview with the Seattle Police Department. So that would be worth looking into to get the latest information, instead of just trusting InfoWars or trusting other crappy outlets. And one other thing I want to mention to you guys while we're here, many of you know that I'm rewriting my book, The Conscious Resistance Trilogy with John Vibes. What you're looking at here, this is a chapter we're working on, which talks about tactics and violence and rioting and looting and what our thoughts are on this. So, this is very timely with everything going on. And again, I was hoping with this video to reach my more philosophically inclined audience. And I hope, I didn't really mean to go this long, but there was a lot of links to cover. We'll go through the comments in just a second, but answer this question, guys. What do you think? Do you support this? Not their demands, but do you support efforts to create temporary autonomous zones? Because I think voluntarists, anarcho-capitalists, agorists, libertarians, whatever you may be, should support this idea of taking back our communities. I mean, unless you're just somebody who is totally in support of the current paradigm, of the police, of the government, and you think that everything's A-okay and there's nothing that we should push back or fight against, then I don't see why we should be against the tactic. That doesn't mean we have to endorse their values or their demands, but I do think that this is a worthwhile tactic that we need to consider as a potential. And then the other thing, I saw some really interesting tweets where the right wing was getting trolled, and some people were saying, the right wingers are just mad because they say, "Don't tread on me," and we actually did it. Or there's a picture of people taking over the police station and saying, "This is what don't tread on me actually looks like." And I tend to agree. I mean, if you're going to talk all high and mighty about pushing back against the police and government and things like that, then, I mean, why not support efforts like this? This is something that I think is very beautiful. Now, of course, I will address that some people say, look, if this happens, then, this is just going to allow the cops to come in and, they're going to send in the United Nations. I've seen a lot. I'm so sick of the conspiracy circles that I am somehow running in at the moment, or that you guys follow me. It seems like you can't think about something philosophically. It's always got to be a conspiracy immediately. So I do see, and I do have questions like, why would the cops just abandon it? Again, I think the obvious answer is they're trying to avoid violence, but I mean, I don't know. And the fact that Trump is saying that, the radical Democrats have taken over the Seattle, it's literally 6 blocks, guys. It's 6 blocks. Violet says, "I support anyone who's actually doing anything to try to push back. It's a lot more than people who complain and don't take any steps to do anything about it." Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And people who just think that this is all George Soros or whatever, you're not paying attention, guys. In fact, I could show you guys. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 links about George Soros and alleged connections between Black Lives Matter and Antifa. That's going to be a video I'm doing later this weekend or next week, depending on my time. My point is that I've been investigating these claims, guys. I don't just repeat things like many of you. I didn't just look at this, and it could be easy just to say, "Oh, wow, I support that." Or no, that's a bunch of crazy left-wingers. But it takes time to research. I've just spent the last 45 minutes with you guys looking at articles from the right, from the left, from the mainstream, from Twitter, using social media. This is how you gather. This is how you do research, guys. Don't just form an opinion because one pundit on the left or the right tells you what to think. Think for yourself. That's what I'm trying to do here, is encourage critical thinking. This is what the conscious resistance is about. Recognizing that the struggle for a better world is going to take our working on our own egos, our own doubts, fears, and insecurities, and our own trauma, and working to get rid of the people who are trying to enslave us. As this commenter says here, setting up a network of decentralized autonomous zones is the only way to achieve change without putting tyrants in power. People need to organize in their own communities. I also think that we need to be able to use things like freedom cells and create these autonomous communities and start opting out of this. I support people standing up. You can't count on people to do the right thing because they won't. I think that's true. And so Dale, let me comment. I think we have more things to worry about, like mandatory vaccines. Well, Dale, what you don't understand is that this is the solution to mandatory vaccines. Why do you think I'm trying to build intentional communities with like-minded people? I want to build like-minded communities with like-minded people who don't want mandatory vaccines, who don't want chips in their body, who don't want to be using immunity passports or using biometrics and all that stuff. My point is that if you want to be free from mandatory vaccines, you're going to have to get organized. You're going to have to start connecting with like-minded people. Because if you're just one individual out there screaming about mandatory vaccines, you're going to get taken. You're going to get taken. I'm sorry to say it, but we're stronger together. So whether we're talking about creating intentional communities of, in Mexico or wherever else, or just creating temporary autonomous zones, we have to do something. And I'm glad one of the commenters just mentioned the Zapatistas. So I want to bring that up real quick. And let me show you this. And to everybody saying, look at the Black Lives Matter. This thing isn't just a Black Lives Matter movement, as I just tried to show you. There's a lot of people involved. So here you go. Here's the Mexican town with the lowest crime rate in the country, kicked out its police and politicians 7 years ago. This is in Cherán, Mexico, which was about 2 hours away from I was at in Mexico before I came back to the United Socialist States of America. They kicked out the corrupt cartel, the corrupt politicians, the corrupt police, and they went back to their own system of governance based on indigenous Purépecha traditions. And they've now celebrated their 8th anniversary of doing this. Now, here's a great statement from the Cherán's Communal Lands Commissioner. The only thing the political parties have done is divide us, not just here, in the entire country. So they did that. They kicked out the cops, they kicked out the cartels, and they went back to their indigenous form of governance. And yes, it's a small town, but it's possible. Now, for those of you who don't know anything about the Zapatistas, again, they are left-wing. You don't have to agree with their politics, but they did more than most of you will ever do. They got guns, they got sticks and stones, which is what Cherán did. They literally overthrew these cartels with sticks and stones and fought them and took their guns to reclaim their land. Well, the Zapatistas, they are down in Chiapas, Mexico, the southernmost state of Mexico. And back in the 90s, 1994, there was like a peasant kind of farmer revolt, and they were able to reclaim a whole part of the country. And ultimately, the government decided, you know what, it's not worth it. We're not going to go down there and fight them and kill a bunch of people. So they have been at a truce for the last 20 years, basically. And the Zapatistas, they are what some would call libertarian socialists, even though they reject any political category. And they have their own kind of armed forces, their own little group out there. And they did battle with the Mexican armed forces back in the 1990s. And they've been essentially left alone since then. They do have leadership. They have a variety of forms of organizing. And I'm not asking you to agree with either one of these towns. My point is, guys, this can happen. It can happen in the United States. I fully believe that eventually this could happen in the United States, but it's going to take people standing up and actually having some freaking ovaries. As Rika says, but unfortunately, Americans don't even dare not wear a mask in public. So I hope you guys really think about this. And as Eliram says, all these libertarian ANCAPs who are shooting this down because leftists should be asking if they actually want change. Exactly. Big difference between indigenous Mexicans versus Antifa and BLM. Yes, oil-filled trash, but you are also collectivizing. I'm an individualist. I don't look at a group of people and say, oh, those are all Antifa. They're individuals. And some of them might identify as Antifa. Some of them might believe in Black Lives Matter. And guess what? Black lives do matter. But that doesn't mean you have to endorse everything they're doing just to be able to say, like, hey, I support that strategy. In fact, maybe if some of you were smarter, you would realize we can learn from each other and say, hey, you know what? I don't like the way they're doing it. I'm going to do it better. You know, often I get these people who contact me and say, Derrick, I wish you would cover this. I wish you would do this. And my response is always, if you think you can do it better than me, then please do it better. You know, so if you see what they're doing in Seattle and you think you can do it better, then do it better. Don't just snipe on the sidelines. Like, I mean, I'm just so sick of all this conspiracy truther movement. You guys are failing miserably right now. Instead of actually getting out on the streets and trying to connect with people and organize and spread ideas like freedom cells and what I'm calling, truth street teams, most of you are just sniping from the sidelines. You're just being slacktivists, backseat drivers. So let them do what they're going to do in Seattle. And if you're in Seattle and you don't like what's happening, then go out there, try to organize, try to resist, do what you got to do. But also don't let the right wing confuse you and make you think that this is, Antifa is taking over, Seattle. And there's also places, thank you, Logan River, for mentioning it, Christiania, Denmark, which is a place that is anarchist space that has basically been taken over by anarchists for, I think, more than a couple decades. And again, they probably have issues and problems there. But the point is, this is possible. Again, if you've never heard about this, please do check out temporary autonomous zones, and look into this. So either you guys are going to sit on the sidelines and complain about how horrible the government is and how horrible the cops are and all the problems and the pedophiles and all this kind of stuff and do nothing about it, or you're going to step up and actually try to organize. I'm ready for all I'm past all the divisive left and right wing stuff. It's more than what you guys think. Yes, Oliver, there is establishment psyops going on, and I'm going to get into that in my next video when I talk about Black Lives Matter and the truth behind that, and whether there's a George Soros, George Floyd connection, which a lot of you guys are just repeating without evidence. I'm going to talk about that because, yes, I am still skeptical of everything going on. I'm very skeptical. I don't believe that this is a completely organic movement we're witnessing around the country. I understand that. But as I said, you can also look at what's happening. You can take the good and you can drop the bad. All right? That's what I'm inviting you guys to do. If you just joined here, please go back and watch this video. I didn't mean to talk for 50 minutes. I'm hungry. I got to eat some lunch. But there's a lot to dissect here. So I hope you guys can appreciate what I was exploring here. Please bookmark theconsciousresistance.com, guys. Follow us. Share our videos. Share everything you can, guys. At this point, I'm trying my best to get the message out there. And don't forget, Saturday is Expose Bill Gates Day all over the world. So please get involved however you can. And until next time, remember, you're powerful.